Today on The State of Us, the coming megastorms in America and what to do about them. Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined, of course, today by the one and only, your friendly redneck liberal and the senior resident historian here at True Chat, Mr. Lance Jackson. Today, we've learned from the New York Times that roughly 1 in 50 are the odds each year that California will experience a statewide megastorm in the present climate. That's up, by the way, from about 1 in 200. Nearly 16 inches is the projected amount of precipitation that will have fallen on average over the state after 30 days in the megastorm, and about 26 times the average amount of water being transported in a typical atmospheric river compared with the Mississippi's river discharge into the Gulf of Mexico at any moment. 26 times the average amount of water in one of these storms, as in the Mississippi River dumping into the Gulf of Mexico. So if this is California, why does anybody who's not in California care? Well, I don't know if you've heard, but there's a lot of people that live in the state of California, and there's quite the economy in California too. Not
they grow
just
food.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, not just the tech companies you hear about, right? They grow food. If you like to eat, California certainly contributes to.
Yeah, I know. We just got a bunch of plums at the youth center, and the side of the box said, shipped from Los Angeles.
So all the way here in the state of Ohio, we're enjoying the fruits, literally and figuratively, of California. Okay. So the other thing is, you've probably heard about some of the other weather stuff happening around the country. I mean, we've all heard about stuff happening in Florida, in Texas, all over the place, right? In the past couple of years, some big storms that have hit the East Coast. So there's no shortage of incredible weather events, wildfires, hurricanes, all those types of things that we hear about on a regular basis. But today, specifically, we're talking about the odds of a California megastorm and using that as a larger example to talk about, what do we do about this? So number one, how do we know that this is happening? That's what we're going to spend some time talking about. And then the back half of the show, we're going to talk about what can be done. Because it sounds like these are only going to become more likely, not less likely. Well, we know that California's got earthquakes, droughts, wildfires, etc. But Lance, before we talk about megastorms, do we have a word of the day?
We do. It is a 4-syllable word. Exacerbate. Exacerbate. E-X-A-C-E-R-B-A-T-E. It is a transitive verb. You can also say exacerbated, exacerbating, or exacerbation as a noun. And it means to make more intense or sharp or to aggravate. And I think that's the key to me today, is that these storms, this megastorm that we're talking about, isn't going to be necessarily caused by climate change. So all of you people out there who aren't really, if you're still not sure for some reason or another that climate change is real or not, this isn't going to happen because of climate change. These have already happened in California over the last 800 years. It's scientifically proven we've had these big megastorms. But 800 years ago, there weren't that many people living there. And so obviously none of us were. And it wasn't this agricultural community, and it wasn't all this other stuff. So there is proof that this has already happened. What climate change has done is make it more likely to happen. And that's what we're going to talk about. So it's exacerbated the possibility of this happening in our lifetime.
Right, because that's where we talked about before. Basically, the research has indicated that megastorms have hit California and the West more than once over the past number of centuries. But it used to be pretty rare that they, by definition, right, a megastorm or an extreme weather event is something that only happens. It is out of the ordinary, not ordinary. However, while not caused specifically by climate change, what we are doing to change the climate of the earth, what humans have contributed, is going to exacerbate the effects of these and make them more likely, and the circumstances that cause them are going to become more common, thereby allowing them to happen more frequently. But what is a megastorm anyway? We talked about some of what it will do, right? But basically the article tells us that according to new research, we're familiar with, obviously, the droughts, wildfires, and many other weather events that have shaped life for generations in California. But the next major weather occurrence will come from the sky. It will very likely take shape one winter in the Pacific near Hawaii. No one knows exactly when, but from the vast expanse of tropical air around the equator, atmospheric currents will pluck out a long tendril of water vapor and funnel it toward the west coast. This vapor will plume to an enormous 1,200 miles wide and more than 1,200 miles long, and seething with ferocious winds. It will be carrying so much water that if you converted it all to liquid, its flow would be about 26 times what the Mississippi River discharges into the Gulf of Mexico at any given moment. When this torpedo of moisture reaches California, it will crash into the mountains and be forced upward. This will cool its payload of vapor and kick off weeks, yes, you heard that, weeks and waves of rain and snow. The superstorm that Californians have long feared will have begun.
Well, with all of the agriculture and how the agricultural community has grown in California, particularly in the Central Valley of California along the spine of the Sierra Nevada mountains, they've built dams because, water is at a premium there. So they want to capture every snow melt and every rainfall. And so they've built dams and levees and have an entire system to keep the water that does fall so that they can use it during the dry seasons that they have. Because as the article points out, California's kind of feast or famine as water is concerned. They'll have a really, like they had a very wet March a year or two ago, the wettest on record, but then they got no rain for the next 6 months. So they've obviously worked on the infrastructure to capture as much of the rain that they can when it falls and store it so that they can use it during the dry season, so that they can grow the crops year round, so we can have the fruits and vegetables that we have in our supermarkets year round. Because you realize we're not supposed to have tomatoes all the time. And I know you've got greenhouse tomatoes, but those of us who plant little gardens, this is peak season in the Midwest for tomatoes. I mean, we're popping more tomatoes and cucumbers and things off the vine than we can eat. And we're giving away to family and everything else. And that's when we're supposed to have it, unless we can them and put them away. That's what they used to do a couple hundred years ago. But then California's agricultural community developed, and they said, oh, we can grow you fresh tomatoes year round.
And raspberries and avocados and pistachios and on and on and on and on.
But by doing that,
bananas,
it's hurt the land, and they've had to find ways to make the water last out there. So yeah, they've got infrastructure, but the question becomes, do they have the infrastructure, and is it prepared for the amount of rainfall that this megastorm could bring? Because they've had some trouble in the last 10 years with some of the infrastructure that they've built.
How do we know that the problem, though, has been exacerbated by climate? Well, the article tells us that as humans burn fossil fuels and heat up the planet, we have already increased the chances each year that California will experience a months-long statewide megastorm of the severity to roughly 1 in 50. So each year, right now, there's about a 1 in 50 chance. That's according to the most recent study that was published. In the coming decades, if global temperatures climb by another 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius, and current trends suggest that they probably will, then the likelihood of such storms will go up further to nearly 1 in 30 every year. At the same time, the risk of megastorms that are rarer, but even stronger than the ones we've just described to you, with much fiercer downpours, will rise as well.
Right, and they don't have enough dams and runoffs to take care of that. They can capture the first 10 or 12 inches, but after that, they've got nothing to capture this or hold this or divert it away from the towns that have developed in these regions to harvest all of the crops that are there and to grow all the crops that are there. Because obviously, if you have fields, right, you have to have workers. So towns build up around where these big, huge farms are to do the work because there are jobs there. And that's why people choose to live where they live, right? Because typically it's close to where they work.
According to the findings of the new study from the University of California, Berkeley, the storms that would not have been expected to occur in an average human lifetime are fast becoming ones with significant risks of happening during the span of a home mortgage. Geological evidence suggests the West has been struck by cataclysmic floods several times over the past millennium, and the new study provides the most advanced look yet at how this threat is evolving in the age of humans. That's mostly what we've talked about so far, but Lance has alluded to this issue of what about the infrastructure side, right? If California is not prepared, which, by the way, it's not, what would it take to get prepared? Is it even doable? Well, that's a great question, and Lance has posed it to us. We're going to find out. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. Donald Sullivan is a scientist at the University of California, Berkeley, and he had sampled sediment near Sierra Lake in California. And when he x-rayed the cores, he found that there were layers of sediment much denser than anticipated. Maybe he surmised that these layers were filled with sand and salt that had washed in during floods. It was only late that night that he tried to estimate the ages of the layers. They lined up neatly with other records of West Coast megafloods. That's when it clicked, he said. His findings from 1982 showed that major floods hadn't been exceptionally rare occurrences in the Sacramento Valley over the past 8 centuries. They took place every 100 to 200 years, and in the decades since, advancements in modeling have helped scientists evaluate how quickly the risks are becoming increased as a result of climate change, or in other words, how are they being exacerbated by climate change? Extreme weather events by definition don't occur very often. Climate change might be affecting atmospheric rivers in other ways too that we haven't yet learned. For example, how strong their winds are, for instance, or how long they will last. Some storms stall, barraging an area for days on end, while others blow through quickly. So part of the thing to take away is we've talked about climate change may cause them to happen more frequently, right? That's one thing. Not only may they happen more frequently, but climate change may also affect the severity of these storms, right? So not only will they occur at a much sooner rate and a much more frequent rate, but when they do happen, they may be far worse, or they may look differently than what we've seen in the past and be less predictable than what we've seen in the past because of how the climate has changed.
And we've all seen the pictures from California where they go through a drought and they have the wildfires, right? And now the land is exposed without much vegetation. Then they have their wet season, and now we have mudslides, right? And this is with just their normal ebb and flow of weather. Can you imagine the mudslides and the damage to homes and property and roads if you then get rain that amounts to an entire year's worth in a month or so? I mean, this is just a real problem waiting to happen. And again, it's not, I don't see how, and I guess, email us at thestateofus.org if you disagree, but I don't know how you can argue that this isn't inevitable. It's not if this is going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. And the argument that we're having, or the discussion we're having today, is how quickly will it happen and what can we do to try to get ready for it so that we can, live through it? Because Whether you like it or not, whether you're like, oh, I don't care about those people in California and rah, rah, rah. I live here in the Midwest. I live between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains, and I really don't care. Okay, well, you know what? We're going to be affected by it. As Americans, we're going to be affected by it. So what do we do about it? Do we move everybody out? Because that's part of the solution. We haven't gotten to that part yet. But part of the solution is, well, we know this is going to happen, and we know this valley that you live in is going to flood. So do we make everybody leave rather than fix it up or spend the money to fix it up? And another piece here, and I know this has kind of hit me when we talk about, the glaciers are melting. Well, we know that in California, as you travel, you come out of desert over the mountains and you see this lush green valley. I mean, it was the most... In my lifetime, it has been one of the biggest events that I've ever had is when I was driving across the United States. I'm going through the desert. I go over the mountains. I'm in California. I go over the mountains, and in my rearview mirror is a desert, and in front of me is green, lush vegetation caused by the mountains, because the mountains force the clouds up, and it forces, because of the temperature change, forces the rain down on one side of the mountains. And then the clouds are dry on the other side of the mountains, right? But a lot of times in the upper levels, which is what's really cool about California, you can live next to the ocean and drive 3 hours and go skiing, because up in the higher elevations, you have all this snow. But as the article points out, and I hadn't thought about this, with global warming, you're going to get all that snow, right? But then all of a sudden, it's so warm that rather than just a regular snow melt in the spring when the water starts to come, now it's going to rain on top of that snow instead of always being snow. And that's going to exacerbate the runoff, which then you don't have the infrastructure to divert that water from going into these towns and these fields and destroying billions of dollars worth of land and property.
The way that climate change exacerbates this issue is illustrated in the article when it explains to us that in 2016, Lance, this was a notably wet winter for downtown Los Angeles. They received 0.04 inches per hour of rain. 0.04 inches per hour. So
half an inch of rain.
Put another way, right? Yeah. No, 0.04. So less than half of 1/10 of an inch.
Oh my goodness.
Of rain.
All right.
And that was a notably wet winter, right?
Those zeros are big.
0.04.
Those zeros are more than just placeholders. Okay, yeah.
Less than 1/2 of 1/10 of an inch.
Remember, I'm a history teacher, not math teacher.
Right.
So.
In 2072, if warming continues as it is currently, right? So today, what we've already seen, if it continues, we could be at 1.9 inches per hour in downtown Los Angeles.
0.04 to 1.9.
Yeah. Or the other way to look at that, right, is less than half of 1/10 of an inch an hour to nearly 2 inches per hour.
And those of you who know geography, you're saying, but wait a minute. It's an 8-hour drive from, LA to San Francisco, or 10-hour drive. So, that weather pattern, it's just going to hit some part of the state. It's not going to affect everything. No, if you listen to the numbers and remember what Justin said, it's 1,200 miles wide and long. So, it's more than covering. It's inundating the entire state of California.
Yep.
So
for a month.
There's no way that, right, the entire state is going to get hit. That's the point of the megastorm. It's not just going to be locally heavy rains. It's going to possibly be wide enough and long enough to hit the entire state at the same time. Hence the problem, because there's no place for the water to go.
So with the exacerbated extreme weather events, what does that mean in terms of California's preparedness? Well, as we've alluded to, and not great, the Department of Water Resources says that up to $30 billion in investment over the next 30 years is needed to keep the Central Valley safe. Yet over the past 15 years, the state has managed to spend only $3.5 billion. So it needs to spend about $1 billion a year, right? and it's averaged 3.5 billion in 15 years. So we're a little short there, because if we continue that trend, right, instead of having spent 30 billion, they will have spent 7 billion. So they will have spent less than a third of what's needed if current spending continues to keep the valley safe. So in other words, Lance, I mean, I'm not, a super smart doctorate here who does this research for a living, but if I'm understanding this correctly, right, if you need to spend at least 30 billion to keep it safe, and you're only going to spend 7 billion, that to me says that it's not going to be safe.
There you go.
Is that, did I get that?
Yeah. 1 + 1 = 2.
Okay.
At least in my math.
Well, that's just that's what it says here. That's what the Department of Water Resources is saying, is you got to spend 30. And if I only spend 7, then I'm not safe.
I'm not making it safe, right?
No. So $30 billion is a good bit of money. I don't have that rolling around in my change drawer.
No.
So the question is, what can be done about this? In other words, Katrina 2.0. How do you protect a place as vast as California from a storm as colossal as a second Katrina? Well, 2 ways, according to David Peterson, who's a veteran engineer. You can change where the water goes, or you change where the people are. Ideally, you do both, but neither is easy. The idea is to keep people out of places where the levees don't protect against 200-year storm, or those with a 0.5% chance of occurring in any year. To account for rising seas and the shifting climate, California requires that levees be certified as providing this level of defense at least every 20 years. The problem is that once levees are strengthened, the areas behind the levees often become particularly attractive for development. Fancier homes, bigger buildings, more people. The likelihood of a disaster is reduced, but the consequences, should one strike, are increased. That's nice, but then the exacerbated portion of this problem is that once you build a levee, if Lance is looking to build a nice new home, and they just built a fresh levee that's designed to protect this area for the next 30 years, where does Lance want to put his house? Well, I want to put it right on the other side of that levee. So now, inadvertently, me trying to build someplace that I feel safe, what have I done? I have increased the desirability of the area. I have forced property values up, and now more people want to live right there. Which, by the way, then the article is pointing out, while the likelihood that something's going to happen has gone down, if something does happen, the results are exacerbated and far worse as a result of having increased investment in these areas that are prone to extreme weather.
I agree.
Well, he agrees, folks. That's good.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't know about the audience, but I'm exacerbated at Justin's use of the word exacerbate.
Yeah.
It's like, pick a new word, dude. It's like, it's just
I didn't choose the word
it's
today.
coming up every other sentence.
It's very easy to use today.
The exacerbation on my part towards your use of the word exacerbate is exacerbating to me and causing me not to be able to concentrate on the topic. I think that was 5 times. Give me credit for those.
I think there's some rule about you can only use it so many times in a single sentence. Yeah, it has to be used. You can't use it to talk about itself.
It is a situation, and we're going to talk about it in the final segment. What do we do about this? Because this is part of the country that the rest of us rely on. So you can't, you can, right? You can do anything. You can up and move everybody out of there, but then how do we take care of our food supply? Right? We can make sure that people are safe and relocate them and spend that kind of money. We can also spend money trying to, and we've done this show, right? Where we're going to, we think we have the human capability of controlling Mother Nature, which if you listen to an earlier show, from a book that we did, we really can't do that, but we think we can. So can we spend our way out of this problem and keep everybody there and keep producing the food? Is that an actual solution? Or is there another answer or a better answer than either one of those first two? Just move everybody out and say, the heck with it, and spend the money and relocate them. And then what do you do with the food? Where do you grow it? How do you find it? Or can we control Mother Nature and we just control everything and we're going to out-science Mother Nature and figure out how to survive these megastorms that have happened over the last 800 years in California. We're going to out-science it because we have dominion over Mother Nature. Or is there something else? Stay tuned.
Can we out-science our way out of anything? Can we science our way out of anything, I guess would be a little more succinct. Well, it remains to be seen, I suppose. I think that we've come to believe that that is possible. Certainly, I would like to believe that we're going to figure out, some grand answer to this equation. But as we've already established, these megastorms have been hitting California for centuries. So it's not like these are new things, but they're going to become worse. And part of the reason they're going to be worse is even if they were just as strong as they've always been, there's more people living there now. And we are more, as Lance highlighted, we are more reliant on California to sustain other parts of the country than we were in the past. So all of those things coalesce to create the conundrum that we're in of what do we do? I mean, do we just keep spending money in infinitum to try to shore up a state which is going to become subject to worse and worse weather events? Because by the way, megastorms are just one piece of the weather equation facing the state of California, right? We've all heard about, the many, many fires, especially over the past number of years. And just a personal story about that. Some people know that I'm a pilot. When I had just gotten my license and had gone up to fly, and I haven't been a pilot super long, but a couple years. And this was a year or two ago when one of those really big wildfires that hit California, it hit home for me. We're in the state of Ohio, right? I'm up in the air and I'm like, man, it doesn't seem, there's no clouds today, right? But it doesn't seem very clear. My visibility over the horizon, right, is not as good. Usually it's crystal clear. I can see from our town in Urbana, Ohio, I can see Columbus, Ohio, which is, I think, 35 miles, Lance-ish. I can see downtown Columbus. I can see the skyscrapers if you're up in the air on a clear day.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone.
Exactly. However, even though there were no clouds in the sky, I couldn't see Columbus. And I was with my instructor that day. We were practicing some stuff, and he said, it's the haze from the California wildfires. In Ohio, I am losing visibility over the horizon because of how severe the fires in California are. So when we talk about not just megastorms, right, but wildfires, it's not just...
Don't forget earthquakes.
Earthquakes, yeah. It's really the coalescing of incredible weather events that California faces that dissuade me from having hardly any interest in living there. At my age, how long I will likely live, the interest in investing any money into land in California is nil.
Hey, all you listeners out in California, I love you, okay? I'm not anti-California like Justin is. I'm
not anti the people in California.
I would love to live out there. It's
but
beautiful.
I am, and we've talked about this, so it will be no surprise. I am anti my tax dollars being used to subsidize long-term places that are subject to unusually extreme weather events on a regular basis. And that's not just California, folks, okay? I'm not down on California. The Eastern Seaboard, right? Florida, we've talked about this before. Louisiana.
So just the places where most Americans live.
I don't live there, though.
But you just named along the Eastern Seaboard, Florida, Louisiana, and California. That's where the majority of the U.S. population is. So what you're saying is that over the next 100 years, 150 years, that's all going to cease to exist as places to live?
I would like to live in those places. I lived in Florida for a while. I would like to live in some of those places. I am not going to invest my money to live in some of those places because I believe in the time that we've spent doing this show, in the experts that we've had on and talked to across many industries, folks. And we're not talking about just science, right? We're talking about religion too. I mean, people,
Right.
we have people coming on who are religious scholars who are talking about what's going to happen. So it's not just the science crowd. It's not just the education crowd. It's not just
right. We've had a plethora of experts talk to us about this,
but not the least of which are expert scientists who can speak on this. Some of them, famous, like Andrew Ann. So it's on its way, right? We will do things to try to manage it. We will do things to try to lessen it. But the sooner that we accept that we're going to have to fundamentally change where people live and how we think about where we're producing food, we have a big country, right? I mean, we have a lot of land. We are all going to be affected by climate change, but there are parts of our country that will be substantially safer to live in than other parts. We need to accept now that we have to start figuring out how to do what must be done to save people. We will not beat Mother Nature, but if we wait too long, not millions, but tens and hundreds of millions of people will die that don't have to die if we start working on it now. Because we have, as the whole point of today, we have the information right now today to tell us that continuing to live in these areas of California is not wise. And it's not just it may cost you money, it may kill you, and not it might do it. It's going to kill thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will die if we don't move them. Because when you drop 26 inches of rain, which is more rain than the state gets in the entire year, in 1 month, people will die, in mass amounts if they're there when it happens. And I'm not trying to be doomsday. I'm saying, aren't we lucky that we have the information right now to say, let's do something about it? You can't move the millions of people that live in California overnight. You can't do it responsibly or without causing a collapse of a huge portion of our economy, both agriculture, tech, corporate America, right? All of these many facets of things that are in the state of California. You cannot just flip the switch without causing a big problem. So we have to invest right now to shore up California's defenses in the near term as we begin an aggressive plan to figure out how to move Americans out of the places that are the most dangerous. If you want to stay, that's your right. But I'm not sure that I should be obligated to protect you if you stay in an area that we know isn't safe. If we know that the chances of you dying are tenfold what my chances are, is it my job to continue to protect you if you choose to stay there? I'm all for helping you and the economy move you someplace that's safe, where you can live and be productive and have a job, all for that. But if you say, no, I want to stay right here, how much should me or you, the listener, have to pay so that that person can stay in a place that's not safe?
Tell us how you really feel. That's pretty strong words coming from somebody who values human life. You're just saying, heck on you people, because you're choosing to live in a place where scientifically you feel it's not going to be safe. So you need to get out.
We will lose at some point.
Right.
That's, I guess my point is.
I'm teasing you. If the audience doesn't know, I'm teasing Justin because I agree with him. I mean, it is, and it's something where if we don't do something about this, okay, if we don't have these honest discussions and figure out a way to solve this problem, then the catastrophe, it's not if the catastrophe will happen, it's when it's going to happen. Okay. And to Justin's point, in my lifetime, maybe not, because I don't, comparatively with the mathematics, I've got, 20, 25 years maybe left. Justin, on the other hand, has a good 50, maybe 60 if, we continue to grow in health sciences and things like that. In Justin's lifetime, what the scientists are telling us in this article and with other people we've talked to, it's most likely going to happen within that 60-year period. So what are we going to do to fix it? Are we going to start to relocate these people? Are we going to start to relocate some of these businesses into areas that are safer? Or are we just going to blunder through and then deal with the fallout from a cataclysmic event? And that's what we've talked about today, is those are our choices. We can either start to relocate and put money into infrastructure to make it safer there, or we can just go on about our merry way and the horrible event will take place and we'll have to deal with the fallout of that horrible event, which will affect all of us, just not the people in California. The choice is ours.
Right. We can build. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do any of that. What I'm saying is we have to accept that it is a losing battle, right? The storms will get worse. They will get bigger. The wildfires will increase in their severity and in their frequency. Mother Nature always wins.
Yep.
Not us, So we may hold it off, but we will eventually not be able to hold it off. And if you're interested in protecting the sanctity of human life, which I am, then unfortunately there's those, as Lance is pointing out, there are those hard realities of if we care about protecting people, then we have to maybe accept that we can't spend our way out of it, and that if we're going to spend the fortune that we're going to spend, then maybe we should do it that gives the people the best chance of surviving rather than simply staying where they are. And I know that's hard because, for a lot of people, this is home, right? And it always has been. I am not unsensitive to the challenge of that, but home should not be worth your life, And if it is, then again, maybe it's your right to stay. But if other people want to leave, we should probably be willing to help them leave and get to a place that's safe and get them set up in a productive way. So why we have this conversation today, Lance?
Well, because here at True Chat, we have a mission, and our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And if you like today's show, share it with others. I'm not sure you'll like today's show, but if you found it informative and you want to discuss with people what a possible solution would be and which way you fall on this question, then tell them about the show. Tell them they can hear us anytime as a podcast on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us is releasing new episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays, first thing in the morning as a podcast. Those same episodes are heard on the weekends on AM and FM radio stations across the country. Who do you have for the win today,
Well,
Lance?
you won, but I want to say that hearing the realm of your vocabulary in the third segment was much more entertaining to my ears than hearing the word exacerbate.
I do have other words. I can't spell those words, but I know other words. I can read other words.
No, conundrum, ipso facto, and all those other ones you used. That was very entertaining.
Yes.
Coalescing,
creating a conundrum.
Use my
alliteration.
That kept my attention much more than every other sentence having exacerbate in it. But you did win.
I was nominating some future words of the day.
You went for the jugular today, and you won just by, it's like the flood you talked about. You flooded me with the word exacerbate to the point where I couldn't even talk.
Where you were exacerbated by it.
I was inundated by the word exacerbate. Yes.
For the State of Us, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to producer Bradley Butch. Thank you all, our audience, for putting up with us. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.